Admiral Vex Torian adjusted his bioluminescent crest, the purple glow dimming as he reviewed the intelligence reports floating before him in the command chamber. The holographic displays showed a small blue planet, third from its star, spinning lazily in the cosmic void. Such an insignificant little rock, really. "Sir," Communications Officer Kala Neth approached, her 4 arms carrying data tablets, the final reconnaissance reports from the Terran system. Vex barely glanced up. "Let me guess. Primitive weapons, fractured governments, no unified defense grid." "Correct, sir. They still use projectile weapons and chemical propulsion. Their most advanced spacecraft barely reach their own moon." Kala's voice carried that familiar tone of amusement. "Intelligence estimates their entire military could be neutralized within, perhaps 20 minutes. 30 at most." 20 minutes! Vex barked out a laugh that echoed off the crystalline walls. "Generous, aren't we? I'd say 10, maybe 15 if we are feeling particularly sluggish that day." The bridge crew erupted in chittering laughter. These humans, what did they call themselves? Homo sapiens? The very name sounded ridiculous. A species so primitive they hadn't even figured out faster than light travel, yet here they were, occupying prime real estate in a system rich with rare minerals. Vex stood, his 8-foot frame commanding attention. "Strategic assessment. What's their population?" "Approximately 8 billion, sir," replied Tactical Officer Brix Volian. "Scattered across multiple continents on a single world, no off-world colonies of significance." 8 billion! Vex slapped his primary hand against his thigh. "And they can't even get along with each other. The reports show constant warfare, resource disputes, ideological conflicts. They are doing half our work for us." It was almost too easy. The Corvani Empire had conquered 47 worlds in the past century, each one presenting unique challenges. The silicon-based Cerillians had required bio-warfare. The energy beings of Zephyr Prime had demanded dimensional weaponry. The aquatic dolphins had forced them to flood entire continents. But humans? They barely qualified as a threat assessment. "Sir," Intelligence Officer Yara Quinn interjected, "there is one peculiarity in their psychological profiles." "Oh!" Vex raised an eyebrow ridge. "Do tell." "They appear to have an unusual relationship with survival scenarios. When faced with extinction-level events, their behavioral patterns become erratic." "Erratic how?" Yara paused, reviewing her notes. "They stop following logical survival protocols. Instead, they engage in what can only be described as irrational acts of defiance." The bridge fell silent for a moment before Vex burst into laughter again. "You mean they panic? Wonderful. Panic makes species predictable. They will surrender the moment our ships appear in their atmosphere." "Perhaps, sir, but no buts, Quinn. We have seen this pattern before. Primitive species always follow the same script. First, disbelief, then panic, then desperate attempts at negotiation, finally, submission. It's practically a universal constant." Vex turned to address the bridge crew. "Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the easiest conquest in Corvani military history. A species so backward, they still think chemical rockets represent advanced technology. A species so divided, they can't even agree on basic resource distribution. A species so weak, they have never faced a real existential threat." The crew murmured approval, but Yara Quinn remained unconvinced. She'd spent months studying human behavioral patterns, and something about their psychological profiles didn't align with typical pre-conquest species. There was an underlying current, a strange resilience that manifested in the most unlikely circumstances. "Sir," she tried again, "their historical records show some concerning patterns, such as, they have a tendency to, how do I put this, weaponize their own extinction." Vex's laughter died in his throat. "Explain." "Well, for instance, when faced with superior military forces, they have been known to destroy their own infrastructure rather than allow it to fall into enemy hands. They call it scorched earth tactics. Primitive but predictable," Vex waved dismissively. "We have encountered similar behaviors." "Yes, sir, but they take it further, much further. They have weapons capable of rendering their own planet uninhabitable. And according to our analysis, They have come close to using them on themselves multiple times. The bridge grew quiet. Species that would rather die than submit weren't uncommon, but species that would destroy their entire world rather than lose it, that was unusual. "Surely you are exaggerating," Vex said, though his voice had lost some of its confidence. "I wish I were, sir. They have something they call mutual assured destruction. The concept is simple. If we cannot have it, no one can. They have built enough weapons to kill every living thing on their planet several times over." Brix Volian, the tactical officer, looked up from his console. That's insane. What kind of species builds weapons designed to destroy their own civilization? The kind that doesn't think like us, Yara replied quietly. Vex felt a tiny flutter of unease, but quickly suppressed it. Irrelevant. Once we control their command structures, their weapons become our weapons. Standard procedure. Sir, that's assuming they have centralized command structures. These humans, they operate on something called a redundant authority. Multiple nations, multiple leaders, multiple decision-making bodies. There's no single point of control. Even better, Vex's confidence returned. Decentralized command means divided response. They will spend more time arguing amongst themselves than fighting us. But Yara wasn't finished. Sir, there's something else. Their concept of warfare is different. They have a saying, all's fair in love and war. They don't appear to recognize traditional rules of engagement, meaning they will use any tactic, any weapon, any strategy if they believe survival is at stake. They have used disease as a weapon. They have used weather as a weapon. They have used their own civilians as weapons. The bridge crew exchanged glances. Using civilians as weapons violated every civilized species' concept of warfare. Furthermore, Yara continued, they appear to have an unusual tolerance for casualties. In their largest conflicts, they have sustained losses of 10, 20, even 50% of their fighting force and continued fighting. Impossible, Brix interjected. No species can sustain those kinds of losses and maintain military effectiveness. Human military effectiveness doesn't appear to follow standard models, sir. They have something they call berserker rage and fighting spirit. When losses mount, instead of retreating, they often become more aggressive. Vex's crest dimmed slightly. You are describing a species of madmen. Perhaps, sir, but they are also describing themselves. They have extensive literature about their own capacity for violence. They seem proud of it. The uncomfortable silence stretched until Communications Officer Kala spoke up. Sir, incoming transmission from High Command. They are requesting our invasion timeline. Vex straightened, pushing aside his growing doubts. Tell them we will begin the operation within the cycle. Standard 3-phase deployment, atmospheric bombardment, ground forces, occupation, estimated completion time, 72 hours. Sir, Yara said urgently, I really think we should consider enough. Vex's voice boomed across the bridge. I have conquered more worlds than you have visited, Quinn. These humans are no different from any other primitive species. They will break just like all the others. As the crew dispersed to begin invasion preparations, Yara Quinn remained at her station, staring at the holographic display of Earth. Something about the intelligence reports bothered her, something beyond the obvious tactical concerns. It was in the details, the small things that painted a picture of a species unlike any they'd encountered. Humans kept predators as companions. They climbed mountains for recreation. They voluntarily threw themselves out of aircraft for fun. They ingested toxic substances for pleasure. They created art about their own mortality and seemed to find it entertaining. Most disturbing of all, they appeared to view death not as the ultimate defeat, but as an acceptable price for achieving their goals. What kind of species thinks that way? Her console chimed with an incoming data packet, additional intelligence from the outer reconnaissance teams. She opened the files and began reading. Human children were taught stories about heroes who died to save others. These weren't tragic tales, but inspirational ones. Human entertainment was filled with scenarios where characters faced impossible odds and chose to fight anyway. They had an entire genre of literature dedicated to what they called last stands. Yara felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's climate control. The door to the bridge slid open, and Admiral Vex returned, looking pleased with himself. Quinn, I have just received confirmation from the fleet. 600 ships, all equipped with the latest plasma weaponry. This will be the shortest campaign in Corvani history. Sir, with respect, I think you should see this.
Yara transferred her latest findings to the main display. The hologram showed a human military installation, clearly visible from orbital surveillance. But what caught everyone's attention wasn't the facility itself, but what was painted on its roof, a human skull with crossed bones beneath it, and words in their primitive script. "What does it say?" Vex asked. Yara's translation appeared below the image. "Death before dishonor. It's their motto, sir. This particular facility stores some of their most destructive weapons." Vex stared at the image for a long moment. "It's just propaganda, psychological warfare. All species try to appear more dangerous than they actually are." "Perhaps, sir, but they have backed up that propaganda with actions. Historical records show humans have repeatedly chosen death over surrender, even in unwinnable situations." "Then they are fools." "Maybe, but they are fools with weapons capable of destroying their entire planet." Vex's crest flickered uncertainly. "They wouldn't actually use them. No rational species would commit planetary suicide." "Sir, that's exactly my point. By our standards, by any civilized standards, they are not rational. They are—" Yara paused, searching for the right word. "They are completely unpredictable." The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. Unpredictable enemies were dangerous. Unpredictable enemies with planet-killing weapons were terrifying. "New orders," Vex announced suddenly. "Double the fleet size. I want 1,200 ships." "Sir, that's overkill for a primitive species," Brix protested. "Better overkill than underestimating an enemy." Vex's voice carried a note of worry he hadn't felt in decades. "And I want full atmospheric bombardment before any ground forces deploy. I don't want to give these humans a chance to do anything unpredictable." As the crew hurried to implement the new orders, Yara Quinn continued studying the intelligence reports. The more she learned about humans, the more convinced she became that this invasion was going to be very different from their previous conquests. Humans didn't just fight to win, they fought to make victory as costly as possible for their enemies. They had a concept called Pyrrhic victory, where winning came at such a high price that it might as well be defeat. They were going to make the Corvani bleed for every inch of Earth. The question was, how much were the Corvani willing to bleed? Admiral Vex stood before the massive viewport, watching the stars wheel slowly past as the fleet prepared for departure. 600 ships had become 1,200. 1,200 had become 1,800. As reports continued to filter in from the reconnaissance teams, humans had something called guerrilla warfare. They had tactics specifically designed for fighting superior forces. They had training programs that taught their soldiers how to continue fighting even after their command structure was destroyed. Most disturbing of all, they had something called civilian resistance. Apparently, human non-combatants could become combatants at a moment's notice. Every human was a potential enemy soldier. Sir Carla approached with another data pad, the latest projections from Strategic Command. Vex took the pad and immediately regretted it. The estimated casualties for the invasion had tripled in the past hour. "These numbers can't be right." "I'm afraid they are, sir. The analysis is based on human historical behavior patterns. Even accounting for technological advantages, they estimate significant resistance." Vex's crest had faded to a dull grey. "They are just humans." "Yes, sir. That's what makes them so dangerous." 3 days later, Admiral Vextorian stood in the same command chamber, but everything had changed. The confident purple glow of his crest had dimmed to a sickly yellow, and his hands trembled slightly as he gripped the tactical display. "Report," he ordered, though his voice cracked on the word. Communications Officer Carla Neth's forearms shook as she accessed the data streams. "Sir, we have lost 437 ships." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of failing life support systems. Nearly a quarter of their invasion fleet, gone in 72 hours. "How?" Vex whispered. Tactical Officer Brix Volian looked up from his console, his face pale with shock. "Sir, they turned their own planet into a weapon." "Explain." "The moment our ships entered their atmosphere, they detonated something called nuclear devices in their upper atmosphere. The electromagnetic pulse disabled our first wave entirely. 300 ships just fell from the sky." Vex felt his legs give out. He slumped into his command chair. "But the radiation, their own planet. They don't seem to care, sir. They have contaminated vast sections of their own world just to deny us landing zones." Intelligence Officer Yara Quinn approached, her expression grim. "Sir, it gets worse. They have started using their civilian population as combatants. We can't distinguish between military and non-military targets because there are no non-military targets. That's impossible. Civilians don't have military training. These do, sir. Apparently, they have something called Second Amendment in one of their major nations. Their civilians are armed with military-grade weapons, and they know how to use them." Vex's crest flickered weakly. "But surely they can't coordinate resistance without centralized command." "They are not using centralized command, sir. They are using something called cell structure. Small groups operating independently, sharing information through their global communication network." Brix looked up from his console again. "Sir, incoming transmission from Ground Force Commander Thex Moran. Put him through." The hologram of Commander Moran appeared, his armor scorched and his left arm missing. Behind him, the sounds of explosions and weapons fire echoed continuously. "Admiral," Moran's voice was strained, "we need immediate extraction. The humans, they are not fighting like any species we have encountered. Explain your situation, Commander." "They are using their own infrastructure against us. They have rigged their buildings to explode when we enter them. They have poisoned their water supplies. They have released biological agents that affect our respiratory systems." Vex felt the command chamber spinning around him. "Biological agents?" "Yes, sir. Apparently, they have been studying alien biology for decades. They were prepared for our arrival." "Prepared? But our reconnaissance showed no evidence of advanced preparation." "They hid it, sir. Underground facilities, civilian research centers disguised as medical facilities, university laboratories. They have been preparing for invasion for 50 years. Yara Quinn stepped forward. "Sir, I have been monitoring their communications. They are not just resisting the invasion. They are treating this like what they call a video game. They are keeping score of Corvani casualties. They are celebrating successful attacks. They are turning warfare into entertainment." Vex stared at her in horror. "They are celebrating the deaths of their own people." "No, sir. They are celebrating the deaths of our people. Their own casualties are just acceptable losses." Commander Moran's voice crackled through the comming system. "Admiral, they have started using kamikaze tactics. They are loading vehicles with explosives and driving them directly into our formations. They are strapping bombs to themselves and walking into our command posts. That's suicide." "Exactly, sir. They are weaponizing suicide. We have never faced anything like this." Vex felt his world crumbling. "What about their governments? Surely their leaders are willing to negotiate." "That's the problem, sir. They don't have leaders in the traditional sense. Every human appears to be making independent decisions about resistance. We can't find anyone with authority to surrender." The communications array suddenly erupted with incoming signals, dozens of human transmissions, all broadcasting on the same frequency. "Admiral," Kala said urgently, "they are trying to communicate. Put them through." The bridge filled with voices, all speaking in different human languages but somehow conveying the same message. Universal translators worked frantically to process the cacophony. "Surrender now, and we will make your deaths quick," one voice said. "You picked the wrong planet," another announced. "Welcome to Earth, you alien bastards," a third voice laughed. But it was the fourth voice that made Vex's blood freeze. "You wanted to see what humans are capable of? You ain't seen nothing yet. Cut the transmission," Vex ordered. "Sir," Yara said quietly, "they are not just resisting. They are escalating." "What do you mean?" "They have started attacking our home worlds." The command chamber fell silent. "That's impossible. They don't have faster-than-light travel." "They do now, sir. Apparently they have been reverse engineering our technology from the reconnaissance probes we sent. They have built crude but functional FTL drives." Vex felt his heart skip several beats. "How many ships?" "Unknown, sir. But they have already hit the outer colonies. Gemini Prime, Zerion Station, the mining facilities at Corval 7. Military targets?" "No, sir. They are targeting civilian populations. They are using the same tactics against us that they are using against themselves. That's against every rule of civilized warfare. They don't follow our rules, sir. They follow their own, and their primary rule appears to be, if you threaten humanity, nothing else matters." Commander Moran's voice crackled through the comming again. "Admiral, emergency evacuation request. The humans have just deployed something they call the Big One." "The Big One? A nuclear device, sir." But not like the ones they used in their atmosphere. This one is massive. They are going to detonate it in the middle of their own capital city. Why would they destroy their own capital? Because we are occupying it, sir. They'd rather destroy their entire civilization than let us have it. Vex stood up slowly, his legs shaking. All ships, immediate withdrawal, full retreat to the outer system. Sir, Brix protested, we can't retreat. The High Command will. The High Command can court-martial me later, Vax interrupted. Right now I'm trying to save what's left of our fleet. As the Corvani ships began their withdrawal, Yara Quinn continued monitoring human communications. What she heard made her question everything she thought she knew about warfare. They are not retreating, she announced. They are following us. Following us. Yes, sir. They have commandeered some of our damaged ships and they are pursuing our fleet. But they don't know how to operate our technology. They are learning, sir. They are figuring it out as they go, and they are not trying to capture our ships intact. They are turning them into weapons. On the main display, the image of Earth grew smaller as the Corvani fleet retreated, but even from this distance they could see the explosions, massive detonations that lit up entire continents. They are destroying their own planet, Vex whispered. Yes, sir, rather than let us have it. But where will they live? Yara's voice was barely audible. I don't think they care, sir. They are not fighting to preserve their civilization. They are fighting to destroy ours. The communications array crackled with one final transmission from Earth, a single human voice, speaking clearly in accented Corvani. This is Admiral Sarah Jin of the United Earth Defense Force. We know you can understand us. We know you are listening. We want you to remember this moment. We want you to remember what happens when you underestimate humans. We want you to tell your children, and your children's children, about the day you learned that some species would rather burn than bow. The transmission paused, and in the background, they could hear the sounds of a world dying. You came here thinking we were weak because we fight amongst ourselves. You thought we were primitive because we haven't conquered the stars. You thought we were easy prey because we value individual life. Another pause. Longer this time. You were wrong on all counts. We fight amongst ourselves because we are warriors by nature. We haven't conquered the stars because we have been too busy perfecting the art of war. And we value individual life precisely because we understand the true cost of taking it. The final words chilled every being on the bridge. We are not the victims in this story. We are the monsters your parents warned you about. We are the thing that goes bump in the night. We are the reason why, from this day forward, when someone in your empire suggests attacking a species called human, the answer will always be the same: absolutely not. The transmission ended with the sound of laughter. Human laughter, echoing across the void. Admiral Vex Torian slumped in his command chair, staring at the tactical display. His invasion fleet was in ruins. His reputation was destroyed. His career was over. But he was alive, which was more than he could say for the thousands of Corvani soldiers who had learned too late that humans were not just another primitive species to be conquered. Set course for home, he ordered quietly. Sir, Kala asked, what do we tell High Command? Vex looked at the shrinking image of Earth on the main display. A world that had chosen to destroy itself rather than submit to conquest. A species that had turned their own extinction into a weapon. We tell them the truth, he said finally. We tell them that we encountered a species that doesn't think like us. A species that doesn't value the same things we value. A species that fights not to win, but to make winning impossible for everyone. He paused, gathering his thoughts. We tell them that we found a species that looks at death and says not today. A species that looks at impossible odds and says hold my beer. A species that looks at extinction and says let's make this interesting. Vex's crest flickered one final time before going completely dark. We tell them that they were right. They were just humans, and that's exactly what made them so terrifying. As the Corvani fleet limped home, Earth continued to burn behind them. But the humans had made their point. They had sent a message that would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. Don't underestimate the species that named their planet Dirt and then figured out how to turn dirt into a weapon. Don't underestimate the species that looks at the vastness of space and says, we are going to put a flag on that.
Don't underestimate the species that created the concept of overkill and then decided that wasn't nearly enough. And most importantly, don't ever underestimate the species that, when faced with the choice between slavery and death, looks you in the eye and says, "You know what? Let's do this the hard way." The Corvani had learned that lesson too late, but they would make sure no one else in the galaxy ever had to learn it the same way. After all, they were just humans with a very particular set of skills. Just humans who had spent their entire evolutionary history preparing for this exact moment. Just humans who had finally found a worthy opponent, and just humans who had proven once and for all that sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one who has absolutely nothing left to lose. 6 months after the failed invasion, Admiral Vex Torion sat in a detention cell on Corvani Prime, awaiting his court-martial. The military tribunal had been postponed 3 times as more evidence emerged about what the humans had actually accomplished during those 72 hours of hell. The door to his cell hissed open, and Fleet Admiral Crix Valen entered, his ceremonial armor gleaming under the harsh lights. Vex didn't bother standing. What was the point? "Admiral Torion," Valen began formally. Then his voice softened. "Vex, I need to know what really happened out there." Vex looked up, surprised by the informal tone. "Haven't you read the reports?" "I have read them, all 47 versions, each one more terrifying than the last." Valen sat down on the simple bench across from Vex. "But I need to hear it from you. The High Command is debating whether to launch a second invasion. They think you were simply unprepared." Vex laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "Unprepared? I brought 1,800 ships, Crix. 1,800. That's more firepower than we used to conquer the entire Zarelian Empire, and you lost nearly half of them." "We lost half of them in the first day," Vex corrected. "By the third day we were lucky to escape with anything." Valen leaned forward. "The reconnaissance report suggested a primitive species, no faster than light travel, no energy weapons, no unified government. How did they—" "Because we fundamentally misunderstood what we were looking at," Vex interrupted. "We saw division and assumed weakness. We saw primitive technology and assumed incompetence. We saw their internal conflicts and assumed they couldn't unite against an external threat. And we were spectacularly wrong on every count." Vex stood and began pacing the small cell. "Their division isn't weakness, it's strength. It means they have spent thousands of years learning how to fight every conceivable type of enemy, including themselves. Their primitive technology isn't incompetence, it's efficiency. They have perfected the art of making the simplest weapons as deadly as possible." Valen's crest dimmed. "And their unity? Oh, they unified all right. The moment our ships appeared in their system, every human government, every military force, every civilian population center began coordinating their response, not through some grand alliance or treaty, but through pure instinctive hatred of invaders. Surely that's an exaggeration." Vex stopped pacing and stared at his former colleague. "Crix, they have children's songs about repelling invaders. Children's songs. Their entertainment industry has spent decades preparing their population for exactly this scenario. They call it science fiction, but it's really military training disguised as entertainment. You are saying they were prepared for us specifically, not us specifically, but alien invasion in general. They have been thinking about this scenario for over a century. They have war-gamed every possible approach, developed countermeasures for technologies they hadn't even invented yet, and trained their entire population to think like resistance fighters." Valen was quiet for a long moment. "The High Command believes your failure was due to tactical errors. Then the High Command is going to get a lot more good officers killed." Vex sat back down, suddenly feeling exhausted. "Crix, do you know what the humans did when we destroyed their capital cities? According to the reports, they relocated underground, overnight. Entire populations just disappeared into tunnel systems we didn't even know existed. Systems they'd been building for decades just in case." Vex's voice took on a haunted quality. "And from those tunnels they launched attacks that made our surface victories meaningless. But surely, once we controlled their infrastructure, we never controlled anything." Vex's voice rose. "They built their infrastructure to be sabotaged. Every power plant, every communication hub, every transportation network had built-in self-destruct mechanisms. The moment we tried to use their own systems against them, they turned those systems into weapons against us. Valen's crest flickered nervously. The casualty reports mention unusual tactics. Unusual tactics. Unusual. Vex laughed bitterly. They strapped explosives to their domestic animals and sent them into our formations. They poisoned their own food supplies to kill our occupation forces. They turned their medical facilities into biological warfare laboratories. But the civilian casualties, they didn't care about civilian casualties. That's what you are not understanding. Vex stood again, agitation making him pace. We kept waiting for their leadership to surrender to minimize civilian losses. But they don't think like us. To them, civilian casualties weren't a cost to be minimized, they were fuel for the resistance. That's barbaric, that's human. Vex's voice was quiet now, almost whispered. They have a saying, the tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. They view death in service of resistance as the highest honor their species can achieve. Valen stared at the floor. The High Command wants to try a different approach. Negotiation, perhaps, offering them technology in exchange for mineral rights. You still don't get it. Vex sat down heavily. They are not interested in our technology. They are interested in our destruction. The moment we showed up in their system, we became their primary enemy. Not a rival, not a competitor, but an existential threat to be eliminated at any cost. Surely some of them are reasonable. All of them are reasonable by their standards. And their standards include the complete annihilation of any species that threatens their independence. Vex met Valen's eyes. Crix, they are still attacking our colonies. 6 months after our withdrawal, they are still hunting down and destroying Corvani installations throughout the Outer Rim. How? They don't have the fleet capacity. They are building it, using our own technology. Every ship we lost, every piece of equipment we left behind, they have reverse-engineered and improved upon. They are not just learning our technology, they are making it better. Valen's crest went completely dark. Improved how? Remember how we always wondered why their weapons were so crude? Chemical explosives, projectile weapons, primitive nuclear devices? Vex's voice took on a tone of grudging respect. Turns out, crude doesn't mean ineffective. It means reliable. It means their weapons work in any environment, against any target, under any conditions, and now they have our technology to enhance those principles. Exactly. They have taken our energy weapons and made them simpler, more reliable, more deadly. They have taken our ship designs and stripped out everything they consider unnecessary, making them faster and more maneuverable. They have taken our FTL drives and somehow made them more efficient. Valen stood slowly, his legs unsteady. How long before they can mount a serious offensive against our core worlds? According to our latest intelligence, they already can. They are not waiting for some grand fleet build-up. They are using their old tactics on an interstellar scale, small groups, independent operations, maximum disruption, like terrorists, like guerrilla fighters, like resistance cells, like everything they have been perfecting for their entire evolutionary history, now applied to galactic warfare. Vex looked up at his former colleague. Crix, they are not trying to conquer us. They are trying to make the cost of opposing them so high that everyone else in the galaxy decides we are not worth defending. That's actually brilliant. It's human, and it's working. 3 of our client species have already declared neutrality. 2 more are actively considering switching sides. Valen moved toward the door, then stopped. Vex, if the High Command authorizes a second invasion, then you'd better start preparing funeral services for every officer involved. Vex's voice was flat, final, because the humans won't make the same mistake twice. They will be ready for us, and this time they won't be content with just driving us away. What do you mean? I mean they will follow us home, all the way home, and when they get there, they will do to our worlds what they did to their own. Vex met Valen's eyes one last time. They will make us choose between surrender and extinction, and unlike them, we haven't spent our entire history preparing for that choice. After Valen left, Vex returned to his contemplation of the failed invasion. The humans had taught the Corvani Empire something that no other species had managed in 3 centuries of conquest, that sometimes the cost of victory is higher than the price of defeat. They had proven that technology means nothing without the will to use it effectively.
That unity of purpose matters more than unity of command, that a species willing to sacrifice everything can defeat an enemy that wants to preserve anything. Most importantly, they had demonstrated that the most dangerous opponent isn't the one with the best weapons or the strongest military. It's the one who has already decided that losing isn't an option, even if winning means dying in the process. The humans weren't just defending their world. They were defending the principle that some things are worth any sacrifice, any cost, any consequence, and they had made it clear that anyone who threatened that principle would learn exactly what humans were capable of when they had nothing left to lose. In his cell, Admiral Vextorian finally understood why the human transmission had ended with laughter. They weren't laughing at the Corvani. They were laughing at the universe itself, at the cosmic joke of a species so advanced they had forgotten what it meant to fight for something more important than their own lives. The humans had reminded them, painfully, thoroughly, and permanently, they were just humans after all. Just humans who had decided that freedom was worth any price. Just humans who had chosen to teach the galaxy what that price looked like. Just humans who had won a war by being willing to lose everything. And now, the rest of the galaxy would have to decide if they were brave enough to be human too.